First off, we are going to do another popping off segment here, followed up by looking at Sinatraa and his move to Valorant.
And I know we've been teasing the Vancouver Titans rumors for a while, but we finally have something a little bit more than rumors to talk about. That and discussing Envy's Academy team.
I'm Avast, this is Jayne, and this is Contested. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Contested. We are once again not coming to you live from the Frontier Communications Studio in Dallas, Texas, though potentially soon enough with some of the restrictions already. But obviously, we're going to take our safety first and see what happens before we go up there because no one wants to get sick and things like that. So we're all just playing it safe, being safe up here. I like that your beard is looking mighty combed today, Jayne. I'm going to have to put that out there.
Man, I turned on for tech check and I looked at the camera and I was just like, wow, we're really going into hobo territory. We haven't had barbershops open. I'm gonna have to learn how to cut my own beard. But yeah, this is the tamed version of it. We're going solidly into complete hobo territory. Hobo chic is the look that
Hobo chic.
Hobo chic
Oh,
is the look I'm going for. It's a fashion statement.
that's nice. That's a quarantine icon type. Speaking of
Yeah.
quarantine icons, we did the interview with Florida Mayhem GM Albert, and he was actually looking pretty clean. It seemed like he had just got a haircut. I don't know how he does it. He was looking mighty chic, hobo chic, or chic. Yeah, hobo chic. That's what you said, right? Wasn't it?
Yes.
I'm losing my mind. I'm losing my mind. But he was looking very good in that interview. And with that excellent segue, that leads us into the popping off powered.
I think that is absolutely the best segue we've ever done on this show.
I know. Wait, it's the popping off powered by Jack in the Box here. And this week, because we did the Albert GM, GM of the Florida Mayhem interview. Now we're picking Karayan, but not just because that we did the interview, but because he actually did pop off here on. It was on Paris on a first attack for Boston against Boston Uprising. I know you're saying Boston Uprising. I mean, that's not much. And I'm like, you might be correct, but we still have to look at this play because it won them the fight. So Karayan's on point, a 4v6 for the Mayhem here in this. Remember, 4v6. Both DPS are currently dead because Jerry's going to get a pick immediately in the beginning on Yaku's on Doom, and the backline is split from the front line. What does Karayan do? Seeing the lonely, juicy Myungbong alone on the point, right for the picking, like a little pair. He shatters him because for some reason, Fusions is 3 light years away and is moved off the point, allowing the solo shatter to happen. So Karayan gets the solo shatter, kills Myungbong, finishes up with Fusions because now there's no heals and the backline can move forward for the Florida Mayhem. And they win the point with spawn disadvantage and down both DPS players in the beginning of that fight. That is truly incredible, not just because it was a great play from Karayan, but because Boston Uprising allowed it to even happen.
Yeah, if you're looking for any kind of rhyme or reason to this play, thinking that it's maybe just the observer cam that makes this look a little bit wonky, oh no, we went and took a look at this back in the actual spectator camera, and that just makes it make even less sense. So, it kind of looks like Florida Mayhem is kind of like, oh, they're frazzled, they're down players, and they're going back just trying to stabilize. You see Gargoyle and Gangnam Jin just sitting there on the bridge, really like, what do we do? And Karayan's like, how about I just shatter? Because where has Fusion's
flex support?
Yeah, and then with him gone, it doesn't really matter. Take him out. If you shatter a flex support and you're in range to follow up, pretty much does it. So, yeah.
It was just a disgusting clip all around because they're down players, have no damage. Boston have spawn advantage. Boston have all the players there. They have point control. And Karayan is somehow allowed to solo shatter Myungbong and then finish up and kill Fusions afterwards because they've removed the heals and Boston is so split. Like, it's just...
They have all the players in all the wrong locations.
It's just mind-blowing.
Yeah.
But that was the popping off, powered by Jack in the Box. And we have to talk about players in wrong locations, or I guess right locations now, is Sinatraa.
Yeah.
Sinatraa.
I'm sure everybody was freaking out about this on Tuesday's episode, but it's Thursday's episode. We've got some more information. The situation has calmed down a little bit. We have now got confirmation because at the point on Tuesday, it was just rumored. But yes, Sinatraa has left Overwatch, left the San Francisco Shock, and has been moved to Sentinel's Valorant team. He also put out a tweet longer clarifying the move. And I know that it's been kind of talked about where Sinatraa left because of 222, but in the tweet longer, if you do read it, beyond just giving some very touching farewells to the rest of his team, as well as staff and head coach Krusty, he says that he doesn't really know what did it for him. He says that maybe it was hero pools, maybe it was 222, but he just lost the passion for the game, lost the spark. And it wasn't a decision he made overnight, which he said that he made the decision after a month sleepless nights. Which honestly, when I read that, I was like, wow, only a month. I was like, man, you need to up your existential crisis game if you only if a decision of this magnitude only took you 1 month, then props to you, dude. But yeah, he's up and out of here probably for, I'm sure San Francisco Shock made a counter offer to whatever Sentinels dropped on him, but he's probably going to be in a game where he's happier, more passionate. At least we hope. It's a little bit earlier to say that somebody really truly has a passion for a game that's just in
Not even out.
2 weeks of closed beta now or something like that. So, but the man has moved on, probably increase in salary, increase in happiness. So power to him. But what really does that say about the Overwatch League, the San Francisco Shock, and those of us left behind?
Left behind? Is that us? We're waiting on the Widow's Wharf.
We got left behind.
Waving goodbye to Sinatraa.
We got left behind. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, well, first of all, before we even dig into any of this, you say an increase in salary. How is that even possible? The game is not. I had a mini rant about this on my own personal stream at one point, but like,
yeah.
If he truly got a now, and this is also not, I've heard through the grapevines and stuff like that the Valorant salaries are insane.
Yeah,
for a game that's not even out.
There's again, we don't usually talk about rumors, which is really too bad. In the pre-shows we're like, wow, there's all this.
There's
really
so
cool
much to be talked about.
There's so much stuff that we could just vomit leaks everywhere. So normally we don't like to talk about unconfirmed things because we hold ourselves to a higher standard here.
But this is pertinent.
At Envytv. But the rumors of the salaries flying around for Valorant contracts right now are bonkers.
Monte Cristo said on Twitter, he says it's laughable. And I tend to agree. There are name brand orgs that are priced out of Valorant currently. Obviously can't name the orgs, but actual good orgs that you would probably know of, that are just that find it too expensive to pick up a player in a game that is not even in full release.
Yeah.
So that's why, I just want to touch on that point first, because of the fact that if Sinatraa truly moved games and got a salary increase from a year 3 Overwatch League with multi-million-dollar investment to Valorant, a game that is not out yet and has no competitive ecosystem announced or even a proof of concept in terms of viewership necessarily, I'm just blown away. I'm really just blown away.
And again, it's not like it's the money is the reason that he left. I'm absolutely sure, positive, I'd probably bet money on it, even though I'm not a gambling man, that the San Francisco Shock probably would have matched or beaten whatever offer the Sentinels gave him. But, it is very much about passion. And if a player like Sinatraa, really, if any competitive player doesn't have the motivation, you need to really have kind of that internal drive to succeed. And if you aren't finding something fun, you're not being happy in scrims or in officials, or you don't want to actually practice, it's like a drag to go to work every day. In a competitive game like this, when you are putting in 8 to 12 hours a day, if you're hating your life, my God, that does not lend itself to being the kind of player that wins the World Cup, wins the Overwatch League Grand Finals, gets the MVP spot. So, it's probably the passion that Sinatraa has shown is the reason he's so successful. It's not like the man can just self-discipline with no motivation through I almost swore, not allowed, through a game that is struggling to be entertaining for professionals. There, that's a good euphemism.
There we go. That was a good one. That was good. You got it out without any swears.
I caught myself. I think I dropped one profane word in last week's episode, and I felt bad about it. So we're gonna try and keep that counter on 0. But yeah,
I think I think for Sinatraa in general, and we should also be celebrating. I think we've already talked about this before about other Valorant news, that there is obviously with any, I think it's a thing with any esport community. It's everyone wants to Chicken Little at times, and everyone always wants to naysay and say bad things about a game they may not like, or a game they're not enjoying as much, or just a scene they feel like isn't as thriving as much as it should have. But I feel like a lot of times we spend too much time focusing on negatives versus just praising the positives of if these players aren't enjoying their experience, especially even if they're the MVP, who, by the way, Sinatra's MVP skin hasn't even come out yet, and he's left the game. So I don't even know what's going to go on with that. Exactly.
One thing that I really kind of want to bring up, especially if you're looking at people commentating about Sinatra's departure from the Overwatch League, the one thing that I want to kind of say is that basically, if somebody had an opinion about the Overwatch League, whether it was fine or whether it was failing, there are 0 people who changed their opinion about the Overwatch League based on Sinatra's departure. Everybody's just going for kind of cheap points. They're I already thought the Overwatch League is dying. Sinatraa leaving confirms it. And then there's other people who are the Overwatch League is fine. It's bigger than one player. Sinatraa is still just one player. And I think that very much so, as much as I would like to rant and be Overwatch League is bad, Hopefully that's not too profane of a word for our show, but
No, I don't think so.
no, we can say bad.
I
Fantastic.
think it's check the pass. It's check the list. I've looked through
It's
the
on the
keywords.
word list.
It's
Fantastic.
fine.
You know, I definitely think that the Sinatraa departure is really bad in terms of optics, but in
Yeah.
terms of the actual league itself, does Sinatraa? You know, it's kind of like it's like a pie in the face. You know, is it really going to cause lasting harm? No. Is it going to be embarrassing? What do you really do about the league, the MVP skin? You probably release it just so you don't come across as like petty or something like that, because he did earn it while he was in the league. And I definitely think that this is very much an internal decision. I think it's a pretty mature decision from Sinatraa to make that jump if he wasn't feeling it and didn't kind of just want to, you know, stick around on Legacy until things got worse, or, you know, if his performance did start declining, and then people are like, oh, he's washed, he's making excuses. Like, knowing when to move on from a personal perspective is really good for him. So I think that it really sucks in terms of optics, but in terms of the Overwatch League, at the end of the day, he is just one player, a very popular player.
Yeah.
And some fans of Sinatra's will follow him over to Valorant. You know, I'm sure there's a lot of other people who were watching Overwatch League who are going to start watching Valorant regardless of Sinatraa, regardless of their favorite player.
I
But
think that the pie in the face metaphor was a really good one, by the way, Jayne, just to interrupt you, because I think for all of our 1930s viewers that they're going to love the pie in the face slapstick comedy
yeah,
for that, because, you know, most people hadn't hit with the pie in the face. But now that you put the metaphor out there, it's people can really feel the effect of a Sinatraa leaving. But go on. I'm sorry. I
oh
had to
no, no,
throw it
I
in
was
there.
coming to the end of my rant. I was gonna
Oh, that
pass
was the
it
end of
to
the rant?
that. It was the end of the rant. It was a small one. You know, it's definitely smaller than my usual rants, but I did want to try to throw it over to you. That's my argument: is that it's much worse optically than practically. Is there any kind of actual harm that's actually going to come to the Overwatch League, the San Francisco Shock, any other cursory related groups, or is this kind of just optics? What's the worst case scenario here with Sinatraa leaving?
I mean, the worst case scenario is it just opens up the possibility that more big players leave, right? Because I
But
think that's the one. I think that's the one big thing that has to be said, and other people have said it, is that it's it's fine for us to say it's not. We shouldn't be Chicken Little and say the sky is falling, but also we shouldn't be sticking our heads in the sand and saying
Yeah.
everything's cool. You know?
Do you think that other players are really going to kind of look to Sinatraa for kind of permission in order to switch games? Like, you know, Sinatra's probably the going to be the largest example of a player swapping. But even before then, you know, players like AKM, for example, have been very vocal about, you know, he's been looking to switch to Valorant, and he's obviously been talking to other pros within the Overwatch League who have also been looking to make the change. It hasn't exactly been the best kept secret that there are multiple Overwatch League pros who have been considering making the jump to Valorant. Some have been more public about it than others. But do you really think that kind of Sinatraa leaving is going to make it more likely for Overwatch League pros to change or cause more pros to make that jump?
Um, I don't think I wouldn't think so. I would think maybe it would embolden people to like be more confident in their move, right? Because
True.
especially if they didn't know ahead of time that Sinatraa was swapping, because it was kept under wraps. You know, it was pretty tight knit about like what Sinatraa was going to do. Most people probably didn't know exactly, but they heard rumors that people were leaving, but there's no guarantee, right? So it's probably, if anything, just going to embolden people that are making the swap and saying I'm more confident in it versus convincing. Because pretty much if you're at the point where you're getting paid Overwatch League level salary, getting the benefits of Overwatch League, and you want to move to a game that has no competitive ecosystem at all, that
Mhm.
has no proof of concept, and like sure you might get me paid a lot of money, but there's also the thing is that unlike Overwatch League contracts, most of these Valorant contracts are probably going to be not guaranteed. You can get dropped probably at any moment, which is how most esports has existed for all time. It's been that way for most esports, honestly, outside of league-based systems, is that it's very performance-based and not really guaranteed at all. Um, so I think that if you are making that swap already, you're probably gonna make it no matter what, because you're already giving up all the benefits you have with Overwatch League. It's
Mhm.
more of just emboldening you to do it. Now, do I think there's gonna be big harm that could come from that? I think it's possible, but I do think that a lot of the people that would like to leave the game. Now, Sinatraa was kind of a out of left field for a lot of people, myself included. Even I found it was pretty. I thought it was pretty crazy they would do it when he had such success here and such a brand here. But at the end of the day, if you're going to leave the league, it's probably because you're not enjoying yourself. It could partially be because maybe you're not as good as you want to be as well. You know, there's a lot of reasons why. And so I think rather than saying, well, this is bad that they're all leaving, because it is bad that players are leaving, but also at the same time, we can't really force someone to stay. And I think it creates toxic relationships with players if they feel like they're forced to do something to continue to like pay and to get paid and to live. And also, I will say that's just life, right? Like sometimes you got to
Yeah.
work a job that you don't
Yeah.
necessarily like, and if you do it for a lot of money and playing video games, you maybe shouldn't complain that much. But at the same time, it's not really in my purview to say
Yeah.
how you should live your life, right? So, and you're the one making the risk. It's not like you're taking someone else's money away. It's just you giving up your own money potentially. So I think that it's well within the right. And if more players leave, that's sort of just how they feel, and there's nothing you can do to change that necessarily.
Yeah, there has been a surprising number of bad takes about contract law in the last week. When we start talking about the Vancouver Titans, we're going to have our own questions about this. But there are slavery's thankfully not legal, so nobody can kind of force you to play video games or really stay in job. These people do have the option to retire just unilaterally. You can't force somebody to work in that regard. So it sucks to be the San Francisco Shock, I guess, in that case. But yeah, is there really anything else to say about this? Is maybe this going to be a wake-up call for Blizzard? Are they going to try and change anything? Listen more to feedback, try and figure out why these pros swapping to the Overwatch League? Is there anything they can change, or is it more based on kind of reputation? Riot has made League of Legends a worldwide phenomenon, and Blizzard has been heavily criticized for their treatment of StarCraft 2, and now Overwatch seems to be kind of heading the same direction. Is there anything they really can do to try and change people's minds?
I think there's good pause. I think more competition is almost always better, is my point of view. First of all, regardless of anything else, having more is better, generally, because it gives people more options in how they want to pursue things. It also gives companies also different ideas on how they can improve or what they might be doing wrong. Or there's all sorts of great things about having other options to do as both players, as staff, as companies in general, making a product. I think those are all good, even though they don't always make good for the bottom line since you're no longer the only option. It is good in general. I think this could be a time for the league to be like, okay, what are some things we can do differently? But I think the league is already exploring those options when John Spector himself said, like, okay, we're going to try these May tournament formats.
Which I'm
Because
really looking forward to.
It's clear that they obviously are looking for a solution to some of their problems and how they might want to, like, whether it be in relation to viewership, whether it be in relation to player enjoyment. But I think the one thing is that we always talk about the league trying to make these changes, but it's not really the league that's in charge of the balance sheet. Like the league doesn't do that. That's all on Team 4 and on Blizzard at the end of the day. And I think that's something that's also unique to Overwatch comparatively often, is that the esports side and the casual game side are often very divorced and speaking with two very, very different voices. So who knows if this will unify it? Who knows if they're just going to be like, well, we still have our tons of our peers and casual players that really, really love the game as it is right now or love this direction for it. And so it might not matter at all to us if the league dies or if the league shrinks, because that's not really our goal at Blizzard. That who knows? Now, would I say I think that's really bad if you have a league that is sort of left to the wayside by the developer when people have invested millions upon millions of dollars? Because that essentially says, okay, no one should invest in this company ever again when it comes to an esport league because the developer will not listen to you. So ideally, there's I would say some sort of middle ground, a homeostasis, one could say.
Ooh, big word.
Between the two,
Word of the day.
And I'll drop some more. Osmosis.
Oh man,
diffusion, the Krebs cycle. I don't know. but the point is that hopefully it does lean itself maybe towards more of that middle ground between the two. And I do think that even if they had maybe done everything right, there's a very strong possibility still that Sinatraa still would have left, or other players might still have left, because some people just want to play a game that's a pure shooter, and Valorant's much closer to that than Overwatch is, and that's just the reality. No matter what direction you took it, unless they removed like the tank and support roles, sort of, Overwatch was never going to be a CS.
Please don't even suggest that.
Shooter,
Please don't even suggest that.
Yeah, but there's never gonna be really that same. It's not gonna be a game like that ever, and so there's maybe something to be said about people might not have ever left. People would have still left no matter what at this point, even if the game had been balanced in such a direction, right? So it's just sort of a middle ground. I think everyone has to say, like, well, this is bad, we need to take some lessons from it, but also we shouldn't lose our minds because there's a lot of factors at play here.
Absolutely. Moving on to the Vancouver Titans, I think the easiest way to kind of frame this is probably looking at, I want to say, the timeline of things that have happened in the Vancouver Titans, because it's been on our radar for what, 2 weeks now?
It's been a while, but we couldn't talk on it because of the aforementioned. We don't want to talk about rumors. I want you to regale me with the timeline, Jayne. I want you to tell me what do we know so far.
I think the first things that I don't actually know which one came first. I do believe it was the Titans were originally thought to be the number 2 team in the league, number 1 team in the league. They thought to be really good. They had those 2 great performances against the Los Angeles Gladiators and then the Los Angeles Valiant. Things were all fine. They didn't play for a while. I think they didn't play for almost an entire month. I don't believe they played during the month of March. And then they finally came back once they had moved to South Korea because of the pandemic. They played 2 games and they absolutely bombed during those 2 games. It was not good. Not good at all. Yeah. And then some point after that, once they had lost to the Chengdu Hunters and the Guangzhou Charge, which middling Chinese tier teams, they're not, they're not the Shanghai Dragons. The Chengdu Hunters, of course, I think that they're really good, but if we're being completely honest, they're not. The Charge are okay, not teams that you should be going 3-0 and 3-1 against, especially when you're a team like the Vancouver Titans. Now, at some point after that, the rumors started flying because the players on the Vancouver Titans started removing the association to the Vancouver Titans team from their social media platforms. So the first one was Hawksall, and then it actually continued with 4 other players removing all mentions of the Vancouver Titans from their social media. Now, interestingly enough, Jonu, who was released today, was not one of the individuals who removed the Vancouver Titans social media branding. So what has happened today is that we found out that both Jonu and Pyjon, according to the Vancouver Titans organization, have mutually parted ways. Now, what exactly that means, we of course don't know for sure, but where do I go from here? The thing is that we are assuming that these are not the final changes, and then there was, I'm not sure if we can bring this up on the broadcast, but there was a post in the Vancouver Titans Discord
if
today.
if it's in the Discord, a public team Discord by a member of the team, we are 100% allowed to bring it up. That's
okay, we're
so much public info that if they get mad at us, honestly, I don't even know what to tell you. I don't even know what to tell you, Titans. You put it in your Discord.
Okay, so this is word for word what Titan Samantha said in the Vancouver Titans Discord today. Says, "Hi everyone. I know this is a rough time for the community, and while the content team can't get all the answers for you, rest assured we have forwarded your concerns to management. What we did get from them is that there are no more announcements coming along today. I know this wasn't what people wanted to hear, but we are in a complicated situation and are doing our collective best to keep you informed. In the next while, we will be doing our best to keep you informed and give you up-to-date announcements." So whether or not this isn't there are no more announcements, that could just be we're reading too much into this, and then it could say we have no more announcements today, but it's also we're in a complicated situation. Is that complicated situation just referring to the social media bad storm that's happening on their profile, or is it referring to the complicated situation of the organization? How conspiratorial do we actually want to go on this? There's also, if we want to go back and go before this whole announcement came out, there was also the Vancouver Titans posted, and this was April 26th, so 3 days ago? 4 days ago now. I know what day it is. Yeah. The Vancouver Titans, when they returned because they were returning from South Korea, they said, "With the release of the latest scheduled matchups, the Vancouver Titans will be returning to compete in the Pacific Division of the Overwatch League." How conspiratorial do we want to go this? Is it the Vancouver Titans themselves returning to play, or is it the players going to be the same?
How many more? Very dualistic very quickly about like the soul's divorced from the body, and like we're getting very like 2 different entities here, but it's
Kantian philosophy versus Descartes. Perfect.
In light of everything, you could argue that the wording was vague. I thought something that was extremely interesting even before that was that they had a high-level person, which I believe, I'm not sure if this was the president that left the Vancouver Titans, but there was one that made a Discord post saying the players are all getting paid as per their contract. The Titans will be playing again soon. And it's like, so you're just...
Why did you have to clarify that? Yeah, so that post there says the players are all getting paid as per their contracts. The Titans will be playing again soon, and the organization is committed to the long-term success of the team.
It's just a very odd reassurance.
The Vancouver Titans messaging has been really weird the last 2 weeks.
It's just extremely weird because it's like if you owned like a racehorse, and you're at the track and then like it hurts its leg or something, and then you take it to the back, you gotta see the vet comes out, it's like, "Rest assured, I am looking at the horse," and it's like, Okay, well, I mean, that's the bare minimum. I would hope you're looking at the horse, because that's the bare minimum for Overwatch League players, that you get paid.
It's kind of like the joke where you're talking about the wife of the head of the Church of Scientology, and there's that poster. It's like, I'm happy, healthy, and alive. It's like, why do you have to clarify that?
It's a very weird thing to clarify, that the players are getting paid, which is one of the most like basic contractual obligations for the orgs, is to pay the players.
One of the most interesting things that I ever learned about the Overwatch League contracts is that the players, as far as I'm aware, and this is not firsthand knowledge, but players can get paid 50% of their salary for sitting on the bench. So they can voluntarily bench themselves and still get paid 50%.
I think that was what happened with I think
Space with the
with Ivy as well, because
was it Ivy as well?
Because they got sold to Boston Uprising. Was also I believe that was Ivy, right? Because Ivy went to Uprising after being on the Defiant and being benched, or was that a different player? I can't remember. It was one of the two, but it was someone from the Defiant, and they benched and they went to the Uprising, and I can't remember who it was. I'm pretty sure it was Ivy.
Don't worry. Chat has this for you. You should have just asked chat. Why would we ever have to use our own brain cells when the collective brain power of Twitch will always know the answer?
And I'm pretty sure they came out, like the Toronto GM came out and clarified that, but I'm not sure. But honestly, leave that as an asterisk, because we're both unsure. Honestly, leave it as an asterisk. Like, who knows?
And I bring up this fact about the 50% salary thing because it can be used as a form of protest, and which is kind of as close to what I would judge this whole situation to be. You know, the fact that the Vancouver Titans, you saw Haxel remove it, which was probably like a burst of anger or something like that, because he can't say anything directly, but, you know, maybe seeing the reaction and the rumors that went around that, the other players kind of, you know, it's like the canary in the coal mine. It's like you have a line in a contract. It's like, we have not turned over information to the FBI, and the FBI is like, hey, turn over your information, but you can't tell anybody, and you just remove that line from your contract that the canaries died, sort of things. Like, you just kind of remove that information as this kind of signal that, like, yes, things are wrong, yes, I'm also not happy, sort of thing. This very sort of public removal of team branding, especially in a unified way, signals itself to these mutual departures being maybe not so mutual, or being through diplomacy with a lightsaber, sort of
very like
agreements.
You have the gun pointed at each other and you're backing away type of thing, where it's like mutual, but it was not very friendly type of thing. Like, it's, and also we're still forgetting a very important part, is that since Janu and Pagion are the two that have been announced, you know, assuming that there are no more announcements, which doesn't seem like, because also the wording of this is not hopeful. Okay,
the wording of this is not hopeful. Also, the pitchforks are out, and the Vancouver Titans fans, also known as the Runaway fans, which were also already extremely fanatic. You know, they were the good. When I talk about like zealous fans, I think the Runaway fans were like the most tolerable, really extremely passionate group that I've known. So, like, my heart really truly goes out to them. It's not like we're talking about Houston Outlaws fans here. Like, you know, I like the Runaway fans as an overall group. always gotta slide that dagger in between the ribs there. But so they're gonna need an explanation, and I think they deserve it. I absolutely think that you can't do this to a team and then just kind of expect to still have fans. You know, there is a little bit of social capital that's being burnt here. And by a little, I mean, they're shoveling it in and just lighting it on fire. I
mean, but explanations can get messy really quickly, because
I mean, like, we're already dissecting every single word. It's like, no more announcements today.
So, I mean, I think the problem is like, when we start putting in expecting an explanation about things, then also every party starts taking on risk potentially that might not be there if you just say nothing. So, you know, it's going to be tough. I would be amazed if they put out an explanation of what's happening. I would like to know fully from their own mouths what's happening, but I find it unlikely that ever will. And also, going back to the point I started before we went back to like the Runaway fans, was that they currently do not have a head coach, which is never good. And they also currently do not have an off-tank player at all.
Yeah. So, like, changes, like, you know, there's going to be more announcements. The fact that A, they need a coach, B, they need an off-tank player. Like, at the very minimum, I mean,
unless they bring in Jayhong to play off-tank now. Unless Jayhong has been going back to tank. Except now it's off-tank. We're going back to the Jayhong tank. And that's the only explanation that could really... That's who could fit the role. But it's still just this weird thing of, like, the tone of it is not hopeful. Because, like, there are no announcements today. We're in a complicated situation, so then it just sounds more and more like I'm in a hostage situation.
Yeah,
and like,
we are paying our players. We are committed to the long-term success of the team.
What more do they want? Do they want a helicopter to Vegas? Get them the helicopter to Vegas.
Let's go. You know, get in. Get to the chopper.
Get them the gold bullion. Like, whatever it may be. Like, this is not hopeful news. It sounds bad all around. And
okay, so let's stop doing the doom and gloom here. What is the best case scenario for the Vancouver Titans?
Best case scenario, those are the only two departures. Really.
Yeah, okay, so who do they pick up? Like, best case scenario, who starts playing the off tank other than Rouge Kong?
I mean, that's a great question. Big brain move from Jonu to go to free agent, then renegotiate to get a higher salary at the Titans. No, probably not that though. I don't know. There's Korean Contenders tanks. There are potentially tanks that they could potentially. I mean, Fury sitting on the Fusion bench.
Yeah, true.
Fury is available technically. Like, he hasn't been playing full time. You know, there are options for them to sort of go around and look at, but it's like the thing is that you replacing Jonu.
Yeah,
Johnny was like a top 3 off tank last year.
And Johnny has a very interesting style too, because when you're looking at tanks, you know, Choi Hoban comes to mind. Space is not as extreme of an example as somebody like Choi Hoban, or even Fury. Fury's playstyle, even though we haven't seen it this year. Johnny's playstyle worked really well because he was always had like a very neutral stance. He was not very aggressive in terms of like full blown aggression. He wasn't. He was neutral, and he did kind of like everything. He was very good at adapting and patching up any of the Vancouver Titans, and he was kind of one of the main reasons that everyone else was able to pop off. You know, he got some great eats, really high awareness, just a really, really good team player tank. So even if you take Jonu out of that and you put in another tank that's known for kind of like these individual pop-offs or these aggression or something like that, you're taking away the resources that Johnny was giving everybody else and putting it on this new tank that's going to need support instead of giving support. Like, Johnny was an extremely supportive off tank. I remember analyzing him when I was actually doing direct work for the Dallas Fuel, and was very, very shocked at all of like the little things that went into Johnny's play, helping everybody out, even though, you know, his bombs, great work, and his ultimate eats, great work, and it's one of the things that got him like really well known. But it wasn't for the ability to like really get in people's faces, win duels, get individual kills in the mech, and things like that. So even trying to replace Jonu as a playstyle would change the Vancouver Titans as a whole, and I'm not sure it would be for the better.
It's a tough move. And then, you know, we have to bring up the fact that the head coach they lost, and it was a head coach that had success in the past at Fusion University, and then with Titans bringing them to the grand finals, having an insane last year. So, you know, and there's always this debate of like, does it the head coach that's doing this, or is it the players that's doing this? Because it's sometimes tough to see behind the scenes. But you would argue, just at face value, considering I've heard nothing, for the most part, I would say I've never heard any blatantly bad news or rumors about Pajion, right? I've never heard anyone come out and say, yeah, I think Pagion's bad. He's had success with all the teams he's been with so far. You know, the major ones, Fusion University, now Titans, excluding this year a bit, but I think this year is an anomaly. And this is clearly someone that directed your team and probably put direction in your team. So it seems weird to also be missing that. Like, those are big gaps to patch midseason.
And I think that probably when you're looking at the coaching staff, when you had people like Harsha, when people had Pajion, these were individuals who are really, really well suited to the Vancouver Titans. The Vancouver Titans pretty much is pretty close to, I wouldn't say a player-run team, but they are very player-centric. Like, they're great personalities. They've been together. They have a history. You don't need to have kind of a head coach coming in and building a new roster and teaching them to work together. They already had that pre-existing synergy. And when you're looking at kind of Fusion University, which is one of Pagion's kind of most, like, his largest success story before the Vancouver Titans in the Overwatch League, that was a team with Arrow. And Arrow was supposedly the more strategic coach working on the actual kind of tactics. And Pajion, again, was more of that player coach thing. And I think that Harsha and Pajion both were more towards those kind of player coach role. So with Harsha leaving, now Pajion gone, I'm not really familiar with a lot of tanks, a lot of staff members and coaches that kind of work in that same style that would work with the Vancouver Titans. You know, it would probably have to be a Korean coach that I'm not familiar with, so I couldn't speculate here. But if you do bring in a coach kind of like, you know, Fefe, who just left from the Toronto Defiant, if you take a coach like Fefe and tried to put them into the Vancouver Titans role in order to replace him, it's again just like that Jonu situation. Like, the people who were working with the Vancouver Titans in order to make the Vancouver Titans successful, these are not people that are easily replaced.
And that's another roadblock that hasn't been touched upon really, is the fact that they're removing players from a totally Korean team and coaches. And you're really not there has been no precedent ever of you having a Western coach with an all Korean team.
Yeah.
And you could maybe argue a Western player in there, but it still wouldn't make any sense if the rest of your team is entirely Korean. It's not impossible, but it's very improbable with the player, and it's essentially impossible with the coach because everything would have to be done through translators. I doubt they even really have translators because everyone's Korean that's been on the team. And this is replacing people on another continent in the midst of COVID.
Yeah.
And you're coming back to an A. They're no longer in Korea anymore. They said they're back in an A. So how would that even be possible, right? Which lends itself to either there are no replacements or there's a potential shift in direction because how do you fix this? How do you fix this when you can't get players easily? Because also visas, you still have to do visas. There's still visas involved too.
Yeah, it really depends on the scale of the problem. Like you very much have like one of the dangers, I suppose, of this pre-existing synergy between the players is that if this is really truly a problem between the management or the way that the org ran and the team, like the team already has a little bit of cohesion. You could get to the point where the team as a whole has a problem with the organization, which at some point you really do have to seriously consider, do you just release the entire roster and start again? Do you either build something from scratch or pick up a pre-existing roster?
But then why would they mutually agree, Jayne, right? I think that's the weird thing.
Okay, like let's get into that.
Why would they mutually agree to just
why would you mutually agree to release Janu? Like why would you do that?
And if any more players get released and there are mutual agreements, then this is an entire team of players that arguably all the rumors pointed towards a pretty big buyout when Titans initially acquired Runaway. But then the players aren't even getting any of their money because they're just agreeing to walk away from it. They're just saying, no, we don't need the money. So like
you're just like we've spent so much money. I don't even remember what the rumored amount was when they first purchased Runaway. But we assume that the phrase mutually agreed means that he's been released from his contract. And on his Twitter bio, which is the greatest source for journalistic sources, he says that he's a free agent. So no buyout, nobody's bought his contract. The contract has just been broken, and now he's a free agent, can go with any other team.
And Pajion's much the same.
Yeah, and Pajion's much the same. He's already kind of put it out that he's ready to help other teams win. But it's like this decision makes no sense from a business perspective. And I've been talking about this, how a lot of teams. You look at the London Spitfire, they won season 1. They're like, let's just go budget. And you see teams like Boston doing this. It's like they're looking for these long term. They're not really willing to spend the money in order to win because there's not much point. There's 20 teams. Somebody's got to lose. And by somebody, I mean 19 teams have to lose. But when you do have such a star player, a player like Janu, who is going to get picked up, the player is incredible. He has a storied history of being successful, very highly regarded. Even if you do agree that you can't work together, I would think from a business perspective, you at least try and get something out of this. And try and make sure, that was one of the big things that was kind of sold to teams as part of the Overwatch League is the fact that there is this protection. There was this problem in CSGO where there's full rosters. A team would invest in building up this roster, and as soon as a successful roster is there, some multi-million-dollar Russian steel magnate would come in and buy your entire team and just like switch the branding. It's like, thanks for building the team, yoink mine now. And you do have that where you want to kind of try and protect that to make sure that franchises are protected, teams are protected, they protect their investment. The Overwatch League is an investment for these large organizations and large endemic companies that are trying to get involved with this, but they've suddenly foregone the main reason that they were going in and got these protections. In the case of Sinatraa, it's not going to help because you're going to an entirely different game, but as long as your game's popular. And also,
who knows? They might have still paid a buyout as well. There's no guarantee that Sinatraa didn't get a buyout for him. So, right?
Who knows?
But we know for certain that unless the players themselves purchase themselves out of their contract, which seems it's not impossible because it has been done before, but not in Overwatch League. Not in Overwatch League. It's been done in pre-Overwatch League or like Contenders level stuff, but it's never been done in Overwatch League. So, and I doubt it would happen because of the money involved there, unless these players were making a lot more than expected. But then you'd expect their buyouts would be proportionally huge as well. Yeah, so it just doesn't make any sense how, like, from a business side, how they work out, unless both parties just say there's nothing to salvage from here. And if that is the case, then also we're no longer working in a one-way street of only the org is to blame. Because if a player is also saying there's nothing to salvage here and I want gone and I don't want the money at all, then I feel like the org is okay with agreeing to that. Then I feel like we have reached something where it gets a lot more complex, which also relates to probably why I'll never get more of an explanation, because that leads me to believe that there is more at play than just org mismanagement if this is how it's playing out.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of stories. There's always those. I'm sure you're familiar with them too. There's a couple stories that exist in the Overwatch League that, the storied history since 2016. You get some of the juicy ones. Some never really get told at the end of the day. even though they're really good stories. I really hope that at one day we actually get to find out the real deal about what happened to this team. At this point, we're assuming implosion. All signs point to implosion. Maybe not. Maybe it's just we're all Chicken Little crying that the sky is falling. But until we know more, which we won't know more today because there are no more announcements.
No more announcement today.
Today. What else is there to say about this? We'll find out more. If you're a Runaway fan, my heart goes out to you. I hope your team survives in somewhat of a recognizable form, but wouldn't hold my breath if I were you.
Yeah, it's just not a good look over all around based off the wording, based on what we see, and just logically, because if you kick out if you destroy the foundation of the house above a sinkhole, I'd be like, well, it's probably not gonna last, but I mean, it's possible that it still goes because at the end of the day, they are missing a head coach, they're missing off tank, they don't have replacements for either, and it's an all Korean team, and you have to deal with visas and COVID, and so I find all of those extremely unlikely to be resolved immediately without more bigger and just sweeping changes necessarily.
Yep.
Like it just seems very, very unlikely all around, I would think.
So now moving on to our third topic of the day, and probably the first one where we really have to kind of worry about conflict of interest. We get to talk about Envy releasing their academy team. So first of all, just to clear up our relationship with Envy, we're technically part of Envytv, so the media side of Envy Gaming. So we don't actually get directly involved with Envy Academy. Envy is the organization that owns the Dallas Fuel. So neither Avast nor myself work with Envy, the Academy team, or Dallas Fuel. So we have no direct conflict of interest, even though the ownership group is the same. So for those of you guys who are wondering about our relationship to Envy Academy, that's that. But with that said, Envy released their Academy team on Tuesday. Avast, start us off.
Well, to start, this hurts me heart. This hurts me heart. That also rhymed because I'm very poetic. I'm a very poetic person, but it's just not good because Envy is probably one of the most storied franchises in Overwatch, arguably in its short time, but even reaching into the Overwatch League where he sort of, it get diverged a bit from the original endemic brand, the Dallas Fuel, and then even remaining in the tier 2 scene after Overwatch League, what the Envy Contenders team was sort of known as like the bastion, one of the last bastions of like very good stability for tier 2 players, along with Atlanta Academy, who also went on hiatus not that long ago. But Envy had been along even longer than Atlanta Academy because Atlanta was a expansion team and Dallas was not, obviously. And the team was also really, really good. Really, really good. I think the general consensus from everyone I talked to in Contenders that Envy was the best team in NA Contenders and was likely, going to be very, very good at the global stage too, depending on what happened globally with the showdowns and the gauntlet and stuff like that. And that being gone is a blow for the scene. It's a blow for the players that are now displaced because they are not getting paid. They do not have a team. And it's just a sad time all around to see the brand sort of exit that and to see that happen. And I think that that's just kind of bad that Boston Uprising is the only team with an academy team. There's only one academy team left, and it's the Uprising Academy.
Yeah, and they are not good.
No.
Yeah. I think that when you're kind of looking at why it's such a big deal for Envy to have released their academy team, it's kind of like one of the things that I thought really funny leading up to the pandemic is that people started taking COVID-19 really serious when Waffle House closed their doors. They were laughing about not Waffle House. You can't possibly have Waffle House close. It's just a good indicator for the health of a scene, I suppose. If there's any kind of one criticism that has been levied at Hastro, who is, again, the owner of the Envy and the Dallas Fuel, is that he cares too much about his players. And he's always been really nice to his players to a fault, and he's been criticized for it repeatedly. He very much cares about the players on his team, and releasing an entire team like this, a paid team that was, it's to the point where when you're looking at Envy's approach to tier 2 and Contenders, you didn't have some academy teams stayed remote, but the Envy Academy team was in Dallas, like practiced on location in the Envy offices, just like any other of the other professional esports teams. And Hastro is very much interested in developing players. He doesn't just want to kind of go for the easy kind of victory, the cheap shot or anything like that. Part of Envy Academy is towards his overall goal of developing players specifically around the Dallas area. So they were in Dallas, they were treated like a full team. And when you get to that point where it's kind of like, well, we that Hastro is still going to be committed to players, committed to development, but when you look at like an entire semi-professional scene of a tier 1 esport as simply not even worth it to the point of developing future talent, that scratches some real heads.
Well, it's like, what's the point? Like, you can have the best Contenders team, but you don't pick, for the most part, you don't pick up teams because they win in Contenders. You get them on the radar for Overwatch League, but at the end of the day, if no one else is running a Contenders team, that means you don't have to worry about buyouts anyways. It sort of defeats half of the reason for running a Contenders team, because part of the reason that you can run a Contenders team is that it's really easy to select players you want, to move them to your main team, and also then to sell them. So you can, sort of avoid the buyouts for a large portion of the players, especially players you're actively interested in moving up to your main team or selling out, right? You can just like sell. But if no one's running a Contenders team, then you don't really ever have to worry about buyouts.
Yeah.
Or pay, and then also that then is like, why would I pay the extra money and the extra work goes into running a team like that when the benefits are half gone already?
Mm-hmm. And when you look at kind of one of the reasons people attribute to like tier 2 scene falling apart is going to be kind of the money. There's no money in it, which that's for the vast majority of people, yes. But looking at Envy, I think they were very successful in terms of winning, got a lot of really solid results, and then they were also the team that had the most amount of players out of any academy team promoting players to the Overwatch League. Like, Envy had the point where their tank lineup got bought out 2-3 times in a row, and they still managed to maintain pretty much top of the standings there. So, even if you're trying to look at it from a financial perspective, Envy was probably the North American Contenders team that was the most, this is complete speculation, the most financially successful, just based off of prize money, based off actual buyout of talent that was playing on the team.
I'm sure Uprising Academy would give them a run still, because you can always throw in, when it comes to financial stuff, you can always throw in Boston simply because of like the operation off of like this insanely huge, like, like the very lean
shoestring budget. Yeah, if they sell one player, they're eating ramen instead of drinking
because there was
toilet
definitely
water.
A difference in investment between Envy
Academy
and Boston Academy. And Boston Academy had a reasonable amount of success selling people as well and moving people up. So maybe not as much as Envy's, especially not within Contenders itself in terms of the roles. But it is definitely something to know.
When you have kind of like the duality of things that are going well, it's like, you're probably doing as financially successful as could be expected, to the point where not other teams could duplicate your success, because you can't also be at the top of the ladder. Plus, Hastro's dedication towards the players and fostering new players, not only just for Overwatch, but also in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. It's I think that pretty much says it as much as you can about tier 2. It's kind of like,
it's not a good thing overall.
No. And then
but also we have to say like, but it's not just good, bad for an A. It's like Eternal Academy also left for EU. So that leaves one academy team in the entirety of EU. The granted, EU has always had very few. But also that organization.
Which academy team is it in EU?
British Hurricane. It's only British Hurricane.
They still exist? I forgot
British
about
Hurricane's
them.
Still there. And they have Unter, the Australian Australian poster
Isn't it
guy.
kind of surprising that British Hurricane still have an academy team when it just came out recently? I think that another rumor, which we probably shouldn't address too much, but it was tweeted out, I think, was it Carter who tweeted that the rumor was that the London Spitfire tried to get out of the league at the end of S2, or was it S1? I don't know.
I mean, it is, if that, I mean, that once again, we have to then, because first of all, we're gonna have to address two things there. One, it's a rumor, so who knows, right?
Who knows?
And two, why would Carter know?
Yeah,
Carter was on like on Bermuda. One of the, I mean, why would, I don't even know how Carter would pause. It doesn't mean that he wouldn't even know at all.
Let's just like take that rumor, wrap it in a bow, and throw it in the trash, and not even talk about it. You don't even know, you don't even have to know the behind the scenes stuff, whether it's true, whether it's not. It's pretty obvious that after S1, the London Spitfire and Cloud9 have cut down on their level of investment in the Overwatch League. They went to a more or less budget team compared to what they had in S1 that actually won the Overwatch League. So I just thought it was funny that a team that we've talked about previously on this show that has been cutting back its investment still has British Hurricane, which is
it is
that is kind of interesting.
Especially since they automatically pretty much say that they're not going to move up any players to their main roster because they're all non-Korean players. So you're pretty much never going to import non-Korean players into a full Korean roster.
Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't happen that way. It does the reverse, but it doesn't happen the other way. So it is interesting. Maybe they're also operating on very small budget, which could, sort of make sense, especially if they're able to sell people. Then, you could argue that there is some sort of value to be found there. I do think that overall we have to look at signs of what this means for tier 2, because for franchise leagues in particular, the most notable one is LCS, or it's moving that way to LCK as well and things like that. Riot mandates that they must run academy, because I have a strong suspicion, in my view at least, that a lot of teams, the tier 2 scene in league probably wouldn't be as healthy if it wasn't mandated either, because a lot of those places are just retirement homes from old players, especially LCS. They're just retirement homes. Like, legitimately, it's been the same people there for ages that have not gone back up. So you argue, like, what's the benefit of running that at all if you're a team, right? And
Yeah.
so I think, and that's sort of one of the downsides of a franchise system, is that unlike an open circuit system like you see with Dota or CS:GO, is that there is the tier 2 and tier 1 are like a amorphous blob, and even tier 3, like, if you're a good enough team, you're moving up from tier 3 to tier 2. Then you're moving up to tier 2 to tier 1, right? And you're getting a new sponsor. Like, and then obviously, because it's not a franchise system, those players that are on the old tier 1 rosters are getting booted for the new roster. But that's just how it works. It's a dog eat dog world out there.
Dog eat dog.
And that's how open circuit works. There is no guarantees. You're not guaranteed anything. It is all based off just your performance then and now, and there's downsides and upsides. While franchise system, there's a lot more guarantee for both players and for orgs, but in return also, there is no sort of proving ground nearly as much because of these academy teams in both League and also in Overwatch, because you don't ever just move full teams up. It was, in fact, considered crazy that in Overwatching Season 1 and also Runaway for Season 2 for the Titans, that you saw a full team sort of make it into the league, because it sort of was not supported by the format, because you just want to build the best team, not the best team that was good before the league, because you have all the power as an org to build teams as you want. There's no incentive to stay together. There's no incentive for orgs to keep people together. So I do think that we sort of have to maybe look at tier 2 and say, do we mandate that teams run these because we need a tier 2 system? Do we open it up and say it's a full tournament style system? Or do we just say, screw it, we're going to keep the same people here forever for the rest of time? What do we do?
Counterpoint, do we need an international tier 2 system? Because Korean tier 2 still exists, still popular. It seems to be the primary location for people, by people I mean teams, to pick up new players. It's widely been considered the strongest. The region, Fusion University went to Korea. Even tournaments in Korea were always big. That was one of the reasons why the original Envytv roster was so popular, is that they were the only Western team to win a tournament in Korea. So ever since the very start, Korea has always been the largest region. Is it really necessary to have like multiple tier 2 scenes, or is the Korean tier 2 scene good enough for the Overwatch League?
Well, then you bring in the argument of like, it's sort of, then we get into like a much wider topic of like, if only one scene has the infrastructure, where are all the players going to come from?
Yeah.
And it's only going to be one scene, right?
I mean, that's it's pretty much been one scene. The vast majority of pickups
but then we move from like a 60%
Yeah.
split of the league to like an 80% split of the league. And probably those other 20% are just, legacy players that are already there, right?
And personally, I've always argued that it was the chicken and the egg sort of thing. The fact that you are picking up players from Korea, that itself strengthens that region. If more American players or Western players, European players were picked up and those players were valued, then that scene itself would be more populated, more competitive, because it would be seen as the way to get into the league. But if you're a Western player, for example, and you see that 80% of the pickups into the Overwatch League are from tier 2 in Korea, and that maybe there's a couple pickups from NA, a couple pickups from Europe, or anything like that, are you really going to invest your time into that? Do you really think that there's a good chance of you trying to actually get into the Overwatch League? It's going to just, there's going to be fewer and fewer and fewer Western players to be picked up all, and that's just a self-fulfilling prophecy at that point.
Yeah, it is. But also there's no downplaying the fact that on average the talent has been better coming out of Korea into the league in general. There really isn't there is no argument to be made that isn't true. It's more of an argument to be made is like, but that's with sort of equal infrastructures, right? NA had all this infrastructure, and we were still picking up a lot of Korean talent. So it's very clear that Korea was probably just outperforming them. Now, you could argue there are other factors, like full Korean teams don't pick up Western players, as opposed to Western teams will pick up Korean players and things like that. So there's more opportunity in a way. But number one, no matter what, I don't think we're not allowed to only have one region exist in tier 2. That's just unfair. That's simply
not
unfair.
allowed.
And I know European people are probably and European fans of tier 2, and like, because technically in a way the European tier 2 system was the weakest of the major regions by far, because they had the least amount of academy, the least amount of org support.
I mean, there were 3 other Contenders regions, but they're so bad we don't even talk about them.
We don't even talk about those guys. No. Well, I mean, Chinese Contenders are fair. I was considering the major regions to be America, Korea, Europe, and China.
I would, yeah, okay. So, I wouldn't have even considered China, but
I think China is definitely a fair consideration at this point now that we have Chinese teams and Chinese players, and I think there's probably going to be increasing involvement from Chinese players as well in the league moving forward. So I think it's fair to include them now. Now I do admit that I didn't like their Contenders
these days.
For a long
Yes,
time.
yeah. Historically, no.
Yeah, historically, no. Historically, they still just played Roadhog too much. They still do.
And they just had like weird gentlemen's agreements to just play fun stuff instead of winning stuff. It was strange.
But I think a question strange for you, Jayne, since I've sort of, because my view on it, I think is like you just, if you're gonna run a league system, I think you have to mandate tier 2.
Yeah,
is my view on it, which is sort of how the League of Legends does it. But what do you think of what would be the ideal system for tier 2 if there is a solution at all? Like, how would you change it?
Yeah, make it entertaining. Honestly, I don't really care. I think this is at least my philosophy as like a teacher, for example, or an entertainer. You know, when I was streaming on Twitch, one of the things is that I have a very firm belief that you can pretty much make anything entertaining. And if you, as a teacher, for example, don't have the attention of your student, it's not the fault of the student, it's the fault of the teacher. And when you're looking at kind of like, why did all these stories with kind of like the monthly melees and the Rumble and all these tournaments or anything like that really have a lot of success? Like, why is that format better? And I think it really is about the stories and the fact that they were entertaining. You had these consistent storylines, and you actually had a genuine authenticity to the players and the events that like people didn't feel like they were watching a corporate whitewashed production of something that, you know, they were supposed to enjoy or something like that. You know, this whole like it kind of does irritate me when I hear just like people using the hashtag like support tier 2. It's like, yeah, okay, but it's like you shouldn't even have to try and lobby for people to support tier 2. If people aren't entertained or they don't want to watch it, don't make a person watch something because it's the right thing to do or like it's virtue signal. It's like that I support the tier 2. It's like people should be watching it because they are entertained. This is fun stuff. And like think about just how big of a wave it made when the Overwatch League did such a simple change as just enabling match chat. It was like the closest thing to genuine authenticity of the players that we've seen on the official broadcasts, and I don't even know when. You know, like we used to have a little of these segments where you get very little stuff with the player interviews, and sometimes they had those segments, but it was like so minor. The real kind of stories themselves always developed primarily on the players' social media accounts, the players' live streams. And the fact that those kind of the scenes where it was these monthly melees, these rumbles, they were a lot more personal. People got involved with them, the storylines of them. These days, it's so far removed, hard to find, not advertised, not promoted. There's not any way for it to organically develop. And esports is really, truly, at its heart, still grassroots. So, you know, if it's like, you know, we can talk about the infrastructure all day, but like the Contenders website, you know, it's not promoting. There's no link from the ranked ladder to open. So
you're saying
division.
you're saying make it entertaining. That's your solution.
Make it entertaining. Right.
How do you make it entertaining when you don't have necessarily the best players or all the best production though, right?
I mean, okay, like best production.
There are some hurdles there. Obviously, the production isn't necessarily 100% required, but the best players I still think are. I still think you need to be where people are going to want to watch for the best players. You
know, like there's Fran's tournament coming out. Like, great, good for her. I hope it goes well. Fran's tournament alone isn't going to save tier 2. Like when I was doing a lot of streaming on Twitch and I was running tournaments, like I could run tournaments with like plat players in it. Or one of the tournaments that I ran had a bronze player, a GM player, just like mixed rank stuff. Not going to say that word. I almost slipped up again. But like, you know, those tournaments had like 3,000 viewers for them. You don't need the quality of Overwatch itself is, I think, it really overvalued in terms of the entertainment. Like, I was watching the ESPN stream earlier and I was commenting that like really, truly, probably a very, very tiny percentage of people really understand Overwatch. And Overwatch being of a higher level or something is going to minimally determine the success of the stream's watchability, in my opinion. You know, you're watching to find storylines, the agony and joy of loss and defeat and things like that. And that's matters way more than kind of there might be something looking kind of really cool in terms of the actual coordination of plays, but you know, if you're just looking for mechanical skills or something like that, you know, that's not going to be the main reason why these sort of events, these productions are themselves successful.
Mm-hmm. I mean, honestly, I can agree with that, but it just opens up a whole can of worms because it's Also, the thing that we have to talk, something that has to be mentioned as well, is imagine a universe where they build like a far or more organic system for contenders, and then it outcompetes Overwatch League, like in
Please.
terms of viewership. You would say no. See, you say please, but then all the owners are like, so what I pay money for? You know,
Oh,
like
hello, puppy.
see, the puppy is helping you over there. Jayne's new puppy is very young, and I'm sure roaming about in his back and in the background, as you can see. But I think it brings up a whole. Where is he gone? Oh, he's back. He has the dog. There it is. It's very cute. What's the dog? What is its name? What is his name, Jayne?
His name is Theo.
Theo. Theo. That's right. You made a post about it, but I forgot that it was Theo. Theo. Well, Theo, what do you have to say?
Woof.
Thank you, Theo. Thank you. That's gonna go great. That's gonna look good. That's gonna look really good in the YouTube video. That's gonna look fantastic. But yeah, I do think that opens up a whole nother can of worms.
Yeah.
Tier 2 of like, if your product, they're technically in a way competing products.
Yeah.
Technically,
I am a bitter old man when it comes to this perspective. Like, I literally ran a company that produced tournament events for Blizzard, for Overwatch League teams, on its own, third party.
I technically
posted
worked
them myself
for you at one point.
Yeah, you did.
I did
Actually, I
Korean
forgot about
Contenders,
that.
so-
Yeah, I paid you. I was your boss.
Yeah,
That's funny.
Jayne was my boss.
Better days, but now I have to pretend you're my equal. Crazy.
That's true. I know. I hate how that works.
Yeah, so like I could rant, and a lot of things would come from background that I couldn't talk about why those things are my opinions, but I definitely think that there's just grassroots sometimes really is better. It's like esports at its real core is still a developing industry that is a passion industry, and I think that if we lose the passion and the direct connection to the community, that's something invaluable that can't really be replaced. And I think that's going to be kind of like my little period at the end of the sentence, because we are unfortunately out of time here, so we got to wrap things up.
And we're coming to a close. There is going to be off the break after this week, correct? We do have off the break. It's after this, yes. And as for mailbag, because we've had a little bit of a longer day, I think we were going to shift it to next week so we can properly get all of it in time, because we did get some good responses.
We got some great responses.
But we're probably just going to no mailbag for this week and just shift the mailbag that we're supposed to do to next week on the Tuesday episode.
It's kind of funny because our last question was, is Overwatch dying? Yeah, that was a great question. So
we'll move that to Tuesday then.
We'll move Tuesday. Oh, it is Thursday today.
Today's
Thursday. Time is an illusion. Yeah, but if you ever want to kind of add in your 2 cents about maybe not just is Overwatch dying, because I think the general consensus from the mailbag was that the game is doing great, the esports side is hurting. So if you want to add anything more into the comment section about that topic, about maybe the Overwatch League and esports side more specifically, would love to hear that. But we will cover your submissions in depth on Tuesday, because we got some real great submissions there. So we'll cover them more in depth next Tuesday.
Yeah, so we'll like I said, mailbag then. Off the break is after this, because remember, off the break is now once a week, guys. It is no longer twice. So now you guys, for all the COD people, you can look towards that. But for now, that has been contested. I am Avast. This has also been Jayne with his dog Theo on the other side, and there's contested.